Hello everyone, Chris Geyer here again, Product Manager for StoragePoint at Metalogix. Today I wanted to show you a great new feature in StoragePoint 3.0. We are going to be talking about archiving, and not just archiving, what we refer to as intelligent archiving. You can think of this more of an active archiving solution rather than a typical archiving solution. So let's take a look at what that actually means. As you can see here, I've got a variety of endpoints already configured in StoragePoint, and I'm viewing this inside of Central Administration, which is the interface for everything that you'd want to do with StoragePoint. You can also use PowerShell. I guess that's not completely correct. And within this endpoint, I have an archive, a local, a NAS, a personal, and a projects endpoint. All of these can be used for different types of content or different site collections, etc. But the one we're going to pay particular attention to here is the archive. And in a normal scenario, this would be your lowest cost storage piece. It could just be a regular NAS, or it could be a file server sitting somewhere with some regular SATA drives in it, etc. So let's see how that actually gets used. We'll go back to our storage profiles, and I have a site collection that is set up for departments, a site collection that houses all of the My Sites, and another one for projects. So for example, let's think that I'm a SharePoint administrator or SharePoint architect, and I'm trying to offload more and more content that's not real-time applicable or high priority, and push that more towards lower tiers of storage. So I think one of the low-hanging fruit is a lot of content that's sitting in some project sites that may not be current or that may be lagging behind, etc. So I go to the archiving configuration for that scope or that profile, and I say I want to enable archiving. Now I can decide whether I want to control what gets archived, or I put that in the hands of the data or site collection owners, which would be selecting the yes in the next box here for allow the information management policy configuration. And for now, we're just going to do the SharePoint admin interface, and in a couple of minutes, we will do the other piece. So I did set up some rules that tell StoragePoint what content to archive. I'll give it a scope, and I can get pretty granular here, but in this case, I just want to say I want to take a look at all of the items inside of this site collection and make that my broad scope. Now that I've selected a scope, I need to define what type of rule I want to put in place here. And in our case, I want to do an aging rule. So I'm taking a look at all of the content that is inside of the scope, in this case the site collection, and I'm saying I want you to evaluate that based on, in our case, the modified date. So a condition being, if it hasn't been modified in 6 months, let's say, I want you to then move that to the archive endpoint. And I want you to include all major and minor versions within that process. So you can see I have the scope, the rule, and the condition all set up. I can set up multiple conditions, but let's keep this one simple for today's demonstration. So I want to tell this a timer job how often to actually go out and do this analysis. And we will schedule that process to run daily and save. So now I only set up an aging rule, so I want it to go out and process the existing ones right now to immediately start taking advantage of this and moving stuff off to a cheaper tier of storage. There, I set up that rule, and now from now on, that timer job will run. All the stuff that's there now will get moved, plus it'll reevaluate that every day and move stuff that is that 6-month rule once again. But now you want to empower your site collection or data owners to be able to do this on their own. So we can go back into that same configuration, and flip that switch to yes. At this point, I can give them the power to set up those criteria as well as the endpoints they can use, or I can only expose to them select ones that are going to be the cheapest, etc. So in this case, we'll let them select from archive and NAS. Keep everything else the same and save that. If we flip over to our actual project site here, pretend I'm the site owner and I'm involved in a chargeback model, so I want to ensure that as much as possible is going to cheaper storage. So if I go to my project documents library and I want to set up some settings for information management policies and be able to leverage StoragePoint to push off certain pieces of content off to cheaper storage, I'll set up my policy here and select content here and enable intelligent archiving. So what I want to do in my case is, rather than doing an aging rule, I want to make sure that since we're taking advantage of versions, that those versions which are not most current are being put onto cheaper storage. So I'll select that, provided a condition. In this case, let's say all versions that aren't the current version, I want to push those off to cheap storage. The administrator has given me two choices that I can use, and I know that archive is the less expensive one for me. So I'll select that. You can see that appears, and I select OK. And that's all I need to do to enable intelligent archiving for this library. Hopefully you can see that can be a very easy and powerful thing to implement and can save you a ton of money in storage.